At this time, we're going to welcome Ms. Sophia Morgan, organizational consultant and lecturer of the University of the West Indies Mona campus. And she's going to be telling us a bit about identities and identification in a post-colonial organization. A round of applause for Ms. Morgan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I was asked to show how my study on identities and identification in a Jamaican company relate to the topic of employee engagement. I sum this up in 2 words. It's complicated. We're asking of individuals in a society who are struggling with inherited deficits of a colonial past, struggling with notions of who they are, to invest themselves in the organization. But how do I invest myself when I'm not even sure of myself? Let me take you briefly through my study to explain what I mean. I'm going to start by explaining the main terms. Okay, what do I mean by identity? Identity is the various ways a person or a collective or a group define who he or she or that entity is. So in this study, I'm highlighting 4 types of identity. Individual identity, and that's personal identity, and that relates purely to the person or the individual. I'm also highlighting the identity of the organization, which I call the collective or the corporate identity. And I'm also highlighting 2 other types of identity: role identity and group identity. The roles, those are the roles of the group and the individuals as well. So the individual performs a role, but the role is created and managed by the organization. And similarly, the group identity is enacted by the individual, but it is managed by the organization. So role and group identity are shared by the company, and you have the individual, which is a personal identity, and the organizational identity, which is a corporate identity. And all of this define who am I or who are we. So identities become aligned in the process of identification. So through identification, a company and its employees, who are the individuals, engage each other, and hopefully, if the process is successful, the individual identifies with the company, i.e., that is, he or she takes on attributes of the company to define his or herself. The other term I want to explain is the post-colonial society. Mr. Branch did that in detail, but for me, I use the post-colonial society as a context for this study because it is about recognizing that the legacies of our colonial past are impacting us in ways that are stifling our progress as a nation, as organizations, and as individuals today. So coming out of our colonial histories, individual identities are fragmented, they're unstable, and we need to transform them in ways that we think about ourselves that tie us to our colonial past. In other words, we need to create positive images of ourselves that are strong enough to deny the images given to us historically and develop rituals that are continuously affirming these positive images and identities. The post-colonial organization is embedded in the post-colonial society, and it reflects and responds to this society. So we recognize that the organization was a colonial instrument of power, and in the form of the plantation. So work organizations today have inherited these structures and are experiencing much difficulty in transforming them. I'm saying that the post-colonial organization attempts to attend to those colonial deficits in a way that transform these identities and build productive organizational lives. Just quickly, a little bit on the methodology and the conceptual framework of my study. This is a qualitative case study in a Jamaican company. I interviewed 38 persons. 10 of those interviews were with the executives. I wanted to know about the company's identity, so I called those spokesperson interviews. And 28 of these were with staff members throughout the company. There are also document reviews, company documents, company reports. And I was in the company for well over a year, where I observed the culture and what was going on. The framework here implies that both the individual and the organization are separate entities. And when they come together, the coming together is about the aligning of identities. So my findings, I don't know if you can see the diagram well, but I will explain it. So I came up with 6 individual identity profiles to explain the personal identity. That represents what people want. So identity for me, personal identity for me are your desires, your concerns, the projects that you choose to pursue in life. So these on, I want to say my right, my left, security, mobility, status, those represent the personal identity profiles. And the middle column represent what people desire. Now they relate to what they desire in the workplace, but they're also translated to what individuals desire out of life in general. So in the third column, we see the organizational conditions that must exist to promote positive identification and hence employee engagement. So just to explain a little bit, when I'm focusing on coping day to day, that's security. If my profile at the time is about security, and I call this person, this moment, a survivalist, my personal identity is salient. Now, if the company is responding to me in a way that I feel is uplifting, as it says there in the other column on the right, my right, I will invest myself and fully engage the company in terms of achieving what they want. At another time, I may be focusing on mobility, and my role identity is salient. So if I perceive that the company's policies and interpersonal structures facilitate opportunities for advancement, then I'm going to give my all. So you work hard, or I work hard because I know the rewards of advancement are sure. So here is what a post-colonial society, a post-colonial organization looks like. It is enveloped in the mission, espoused values, and the organizational practices of the company. But we want to highlight 3 things, or 3 elements of such an organization. There's a strong national ethos, a sense of contribution and nation building. There's also practices in the organization that encourage empowerment. So stratification is naturally how organizations operate. They operate in stratified ways. So we have roles ranging from CEOs to the ancillary staff. The point we're making here is that in spite of where you are in the company, everybody matters. So empowerment is about ensuring that everybody feels that they matter. Social affirmation is about building valued selves. So we want to affirm you as a human being and value your membership in the company. And we're saying as well that you're not alone. So that's what a post-colonial organization looked like. In summing up, how does this relate to employee engagement, we're saying that there are multiple identities in the organization, and it's important that they all align, they all become aligned to facilitate optimal engagement or optimal identification. So I know that we're talking about employee engagement, but I want to make the point that engagement is a two-way process. It is a negotiation process between the company and the individual. As my findings show, all identities need to be aligned. So employee engagement is a top-down process. The company is asking, what can we do to better facilitate engagement? But I'm pointing out here that the company must also recognize that employees have a voice. They know what they want, and to engage them, we have to listen to them. So it's also a bottom-up process. I want to make the point that engagement, we are appreciating that the organization that the individual or the employee comes to the organization with a range of desires as indicated in the identity profile. So when we're thinking about employee engagement, we have to build multidimensional programs that take care of all of these desires. So finally, work productivity. So the issue of work productivity, therefore, is about building productive organizational life via the development and transformation of identities. Productivity becomes a non-issue in a company that invests in building and transforming identities and providing a context for the alignment of identities and building productive organizational lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morgan. Just reminding that the presentations will be uploaded onto the website. Hi, Harold. And you should be tweeting quite a bit right now. We've heard some very interesting information. So we do know organizations have multiple identities, such as group and corporate, and they do not naturally align. Thank you for that, Sophia. And employee engagement actually occurs when these identities are aligned, producing positive employee identification.